Section 24 of Anthropology. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Anthropology, Book 1, by Immanuel Kant, translated by Adolf Ernst Kroger. Section 24. Desultory Remarks. 51. Together with the development of the germs of propagation, we find the germ of insanity, which also is inheritable. It is dangerous to marry into families where even one person has been so affected, for no matter how many children a married couple may have had who have not had this taint, because, for instance, they took after their father, grandfather, or other paternal ancestors. Still, if the mother has had only one insanely tainted child, no matter how free she is herself from the taint, she will at one time give birth to a child which, taking after the mother, as one can see by the bodily resemblance, will show this inherited trace of insanity. Often people pretend that they can point out the accidental cause of this disease, and hence view it not as inherited, but as acquired. Love made him crazy, they say of one person. Pride made him insane, they say of another, and of a third they will even say, he studied too much. Now, to fall in love with a person of high rank, whom it is the greatest absurdity to ask in marriage, is not the cause but the effect of insanity. And, so far as pride is concerned, the presumption of an insignificant person to require others to bow down to him and to assume haughty airs toward those others presupposes an insanity without which he would never have exhibited such conduct. So far as too much studying is concerned, finally, I think there is little need of apprehension and of warning young men. Footnote: the overtrading of merchants which leads them to branch off into extravagant plans beyond their powers is a common phenomenon. But anxious parents need have no fear that the diligence of their children may be overexerted if their head is otherwise in a healthy condition. Nature itself has provided against such overstocking of knowledge, by causing students to feel a disgust at things over which they have brooded to excess, and at the same time in vain. In that matter, youth needs spurs rather than reins. Even the most violent and protracted exertion in this respect, though it may tire out the mind, so as even to make a man detest science, cannot put the mind out unless, indeed, it was previously disordered by finding, for instance, an attraction in mystical books and revelations that pass common understanding. This applies also to an inclination to devote oneself entirely to the reading of books that have received a certain holy consecration, simply on that account, and without paying attention to their moral teachings, a tendency for which a certain author has invented the expression, "He is Scripture mad." Whether there is any distinction between general insanity, delirium generale, and the insanity which sticks to a specific object, delirium circa objectum, I doubt. Irrationality, which is something positive and not mere absence of reason, is just like rationality, a simple form into which objects can be fitted, and both have, therefore, a character of generality. But when this insane tendency at last breaks out, which generally occurs suddenly, then the insane person thereafter raves especially on whatever first chances to strike the mind, since the newness of the impression takes a firmer hold than do the impressions of subsequent occurrences. People also say of a man whose head has gone astray, he has passed the line, just as if a person who for the first time passes the equator were in danger of losing his senses. But this is a misunderstanding. What those people wish to say is this: that snob who expected to fish gold without much exertion simply by a voyage to India, sketches out his plans as a real fool even on this side of the line. But during the execution of his plan the incipient craziness increases, and on his return shows itself in its full development, even though fortune may have been kind to him. Suspicions that there is something the matter with the mind fall even upon those who talk aloud to themselves, or who are caught gesticulating when alone in their rooms. This is still more the case when such persons believe themselves specially favored, or haunted, or admitted into converse with higher beings, but does not apply when they, perhaps, hold other saintly men open to these supernatural contemplations, but except themselves, and perhaps even do not entertain a desire to participate in such a gift. The only general mark of insanity is the loss of common sense, sensus communis, and the logical obstinacy, sensus privatus, which supplants it. As when, for instance, a person sees in broad daylight a burning candle on his table which no one else sees, or hears a voice which no one else hears. For it is a subjective, necessary test of the correctness of our judgments in general, and hence of the health of our understanding, that we should apply the same test to the understanding of others, that we should therefore not isolate our judgment, and yet at the same time pass it for public judgment. This is the reason why the prohibiting of books that are based merely on theoretical opinions, and especially if they have no influence at all on legal doing or not doing, offends humanity. For by such prohibition government takes away from us, if not the only, at least the most extensive and effective means to correct our own thoughts, which we do promulgate publicly, in order to see whether they agree with the thoughts of others, since otherwise something purely subjective, for instance habit or inclination, might be very easily taken for objective, which really constitutes the appearance, of which men say that it cheats, or rather which induces men to cheat themselves in the application of a rule. A man who does not bother himself at all in this respect, but has made up his mind to follow his own private bent of mind, without acknowledging the common sense as valid, even though it should be altogether in an opposite direction, is given over to a play of thoughts, wherein he acts and judges, not as in a world common with others, but as in a dream, in a world of his own. Sometimes this may appear only in the expressions wherewith an otherwise clear-minded head tries to communicate his external impressions to others, in a manner that they do not conform to the common sense, but retain his individual notion. For instance, the talented author of the Oceana, Mr. Harrington, had the notion that his exhalations, effluvia, burst from his skin in the shape of flies. Now this may well have originated in electric effects upon a body so surcharged, of which phenomenon indeed people claim to have had some practical experience, and he may therefore have intended merely to indicate thereby a similarity between his feeling and that origin, but on no account a perception of those flies. Insanity accompanied with raving, rabies, which is an affection of anger against a true or imaginary object that makes one insusceptible against all external impressions, is simply a cross-breed of a disturbance, which oftener looks more terrible than it really is in its consequences, and which is not rooted as the paroxysm in a feverish sickness, but rather excited by material causes, and can often be alleviated by the physician through means of a single dose of medicine. Section 24.